Decision Maths route inspection. So if it's a route inspection question, it will always have the phrase route inspection. So look for that in the question. And remember that route inspection, the first step, you identify the odd vertices. Usually there will be 4 odd vertices or odd nodes. The setting out is really important. You have to set them out so that you've got 3 sets of pairs. So if the 4 odd nodes were A, B, C and D, you've got AB with CD, AC with BD, AD with CD. If you don't identify these sort of 3 pairings, you will end up with very few marks. So make sure that you start off with that skeleton shape. You then need to write down the length. So what's the length if you were to repeat from A to B? What's the length from CD? So you can check that bit in the textbook, but you need to write the length. In terms of key things to remember, watch out. In the question, it might look the shortest, but it isn't necessarily. And that's where people often lose marks, where they just go for the direct route or the one that looks the shortest, and they've very sneakily put in a quicker, shorter route, which looks longer. So double check that you have got the shortest. Once you've filled out the values and the numbers in here, identify which of these pairings gives you the shortest route, and then read the question. What does it want you to give? If it asks you to write down the edges that need to be repeated, remember that AEB is not an edge, that's a route. So if you need to write down the edges, you write AE, comma, EB. Those are the 2 edges that you're repeating. It might ask you for the length of the route. Look at the question because it'll give you the total weight for the whole system, and then you need to add on the repeated bits that come from your table here. It might ask you to give a route, in which case you list a route A, B, E, B, C, etc., starting and ending at the same point. Make sure you check the question carefully, because if you start at the wrong vertex, you will lose marks. So double check where your starting point is. That's the basic method, and then very often the questions go on and adapt it slightly. So it might say you can now start and end at different places. If you start and end at different places, then you can have 2 odd nodes, which means that you only want to repeat 1 pairing. It will say explain your reasoning. So the explanation you need to give is you need to say can now have 2 odd nodes. The shortest single pairing to repeat is this one. Make sure you name it. They will be expecting the letters. So the shortest single pairing to repeat is AB. You then need to say, so the other 2 vertices or nodes will be the start and the finish. And again, name them. Do not talk in generalizations. So your reasoning would say, we can now have 2 odd nodes. The shortest pairing to repeat is AB, so therefore C and D will be the 2 odd nodes, which will be the start and the finish. And then again, double check the question. What does it want you to write down? Does it want the new route? Does it want the new length? Make sure that you answer what it wants. Another adaptation you might get is where a road is blocked or a road is no longer needed. Have a look and see if that changes the number of odd vertices, but don't forget that you need to take away the road that you're no longer doing from the total distance required. Don't forget that you need to take it away. Each of the adapted questions can be slightly different, so you need to think them through very carefully, but these are some of the basics, and certainly this explanation comes up a lot. Few definitions you need to learn. Get these written down in your key learning books and then set about learning them now. First one, a valency, or the order of a node of vertex, is the number of edges incident to it. They will be looking for that word. So the valency of a vertex is the number of edges incident to it. All definitions you must give exactly as written. If you use lines instead of edges, you won't get the mark. If you don't use the word incident, you won't get the mark. You might get a question about why must there be an even number of odd nodes. And the answer is each edge adds 2 to the sum of the valencies. So the total of the valencies must be even. An odd number of odd nodes will give an odd total, which is impossible. So there must be an even number of odd nodes. Some other definitions that you'll get connected to this topic as well. You might be asked what a graph is. A graph a network graph consists of vertices or nodes which are connected by edges or arcs. Again, you must use the right terminology. A root is a finite sequence of edges such that the end vertex of one edge in the sequence is the start vertex of the next. So it's a finite sequence of edges such that the end vertex of one edge in the sequence is the start vertex of the next. And vertices may appear more than once in a root. A path isn't a definition that is needed in this topic, but a path and a root are very similar. So a root, this idea, it's a finite sequence of edges such that the end vertex of one edge in the sequence is the start vertex of the next, but vertices may appear more than once. Path is the same thing, but in which no vertex appears more than once. So a path is a finite sequence of edges such that the end vertex of one edge in the sequence is the start vertex of the next, and in which no vertex appears more than once. This definition comes into a slightly different topic, but they are similar, so they're worth learning together. You might also be asked about an Eulerian graph. An Eulerian graph is one which has no odd vertices. It's traversable and starts and ends at the same vertex. A semi-Eulerian graph is one which has exactly 2 odd vertices, and it's traversable where the root starts and ends at different vertices. So Eulerian graph is traversable, starting and ending at the same vertex. A semi-Eulerian graph is traversable, but only if you start and end at different vertices. And a traversable graph is one in which a root can be traced so that all edges are included. So those are key definitions that you need to learn in this topic.